on pre-budget discussion, and it is being chaired by Professor Virendra Malhotra. So, a little introduction about EGROW, Foundation for Economic Growth and Welfare, we called in short EGROW Foundation, is a multidisciplinary organization engaged in independent and high quality research in the areas of macroeconomic policy, public welfare, national security, and diplomacy. EGROW Foundation, this was established in October 2018, and till date we have conducted more than 250 webinars on contemporary issues with expert speakers ranging from Nobel laureates, renowned economists, policymakers, and academicians from India and abroad. So before we proceed, I will briefly introduce the chairperson, Professor Virendra Malhotra. Professor Malhotra is presently Chairman, Food Commission of Madhya Pradesh, constituted under National Food Security Act. Prior to his current position, he served as Member Secretary, Indian Council of Social Science Research from 2016 to 2022. He has been a professor of economics and worked with the Department of Economics at Chaudhry Charan Singh University, Meerut. He is also a member of the board of many renowned social science research institutes of the country, and is also part of the executive of many international research body associations. So, sir, I hand over to you for conducting the webinars further. So, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Chand, for such a generous introduction of me. Good to see that EGROW has been very regularly organizing such webinars, discussions, and seminars also. I've seen and participated some of their seminars at India International Center also, and I'm reminded of the kind of discussions which are held at EGROW. So my compliments to you for organizing this event of immense importance, in fact, and bringing lot many experts, very distinguished people from different fields of nation's life for today's webinar. We have a very, very distinguished panel, namely Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, Shri Deepak Chenoy, Dr. Dharmakirti Joshi, Mr. S. Baljit Singh, Mr. Ajit Pai, Dr. Ajay K. Tomar, Dr. U.R. Rajeshwari, and Dr. Saakshi Jha. So we have a good mix of people. In fact, as far as the expertise is concerned, we have people from defense, technology, financial market, industry, academia also. And we have a good blend of very seasoned and relatively young economists of the country also. So I would first make my request to Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, if he's there.
I am.
Okay, thank you. So he has been a research fellow at ITSA and has done his PhD in defense studies. He's a regular participant in seminars, lectures in various institutions, and regularly writes for newspapers, military journals, and contribute papers or chapters in edited books. He currently holds Dr. Bipin Rawat Chair of Excellence at United Service Institution of India, New Delhi, and is also a distinguished fellow with Vivekananda International Foundation and has been a fellow at Center for Land Warfare Studies, CLAWS. He joined the forces through Gorkha Rifles in 1977 and has a very distinguished career spanning over more than 40 years with Indian Army and has served at different borders of the country. In fact, and a vast experience of being trained and training, not only in India, but also in Africa, uh, Botswana, Nigeria. He has also commanded the Fire and Fury Corps in Ladakh. So with this, I hand it over to Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma. The idea is that initially each one of the distinguished speakers will speak for 5 to 7 minutes, especially relating to their area of expertise and interest. And they would highlight what are the expectations, how things have been happening, what are the issues in debate, and maybe in second round then we'll come to address few questions which are of immense relevance, in fact, relating to the areas in which they would share their concerns. So Dr. Sharma now, he's a blend of both, a leader in army and also somebody who has got a very deep interest in academic interests, especially pertaining to the defense studies. So Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored by the kind words, sir, and the generous introduction. Uh, Let me initially congratulate you, sir, and to everybody else in EGROW Foundation for this very timely seminar. And also take it the opportunity to wish you all a very happy New Year, sir. Now, the basic theme, I'm not going to bore with too many figures around of defense budget, but since this is an opportunity for me to say my mind, I will do so, sir. The fact of the matter is that is Viksit Bharat and Surakshit Bharat divergent or convergence? That's the basic issue of my theme is. Can India become a Viksit Bharat without ensuring ourselves to be a Surakshit Bharat? My contention is that they are both wheels of the same chariot. And for quite some time, we have been having a kind of stepmotherly treatment on allocation of funds across towards the defense sector. We have been in last 10 odd years stagnant at about 2% of GDP, of which about 5%, 0.5% goes across towards pensions. So when, if we say that the Ministry of Defense gets the largest budget share among any ministry, 6,20,000 crores, it is indeed a very large budget, and it seems so. But operationally speaking, one must be clear that we have two unsettled borders, unsorted out borders from last 7.5 decades. We have fought wars continuously, and we have been surprised often in whether it was Kargil or whether it was attack on the parliament or attack in Mumbai or recently in Ladakh, eastern Ladakh. So we have adversaries who have intentions towards us, and we just cannot obviate this issue of the problems faced by India in matters of defense. Now that's the operational commitments. Many times we say that there is a very large salary and defense budget for the defense forces. Rightly so, if we get 100 rupees, it's about 51 to 55, depending on which year, goes to salaries and pensions. Now, salaries budget is rising by about 1% a year. Pension budget is reducing by about 1% a year. The fact of the matter is that indeed larger quantum goes across towards salaries and revenue portion of the budget. Only 25 to 27% every year goes towards capital expenditure and capital acquisitions, of which also there are significant committed liabilities which are carried forward year to year. So the tangible portion of the capital budget available for carrying out modernization is nothing very significant. So that's the basic bottom line that I wish to state here. Now, having said that, we also understand that there are socio-economic responsibilities in the country. There are requirements. We are not a very rich country. We might be running to $4 trillion budget, but we have a very large population, and there is large outlay that goes on socio-economic expenditures and the developmental schemes, which are also imperative. However, having said that, war is a nasty business. There is no saving grace subsequently when some things go wrong. And when they go wrong, then that generation will accuse the past generations of people like me that you didn't prepare the nation well enough for this war which came up here. To say that a war will not happen and the wars are passé and is proven wrong now, with about 32 wars on in the world today, including the very nasty war between Russia and Ukraine and what's happening in the Middle East. Now, can we do something? Finally, it's a question of finding a share of the budget. There is, if we say we are running at 1.5% of GDP for the total defense budget and removing the pensions apart, it is indeed very, very low quality work that can be brought about in transformation and modernization of the defense forces. We need to take some steps at least to generate some money. Now there are 17, the 15th Finance Commission had made some recommendations which were not actually sorted out, like the monetization of defense land. We are a very large holder of land, in the largest holder of land in the country. So can we monetize the land? Can we divest from the PSUs? Can we go across towards the private sector in India, outside the public sector? On investment. So there are a whole lot of recommendations which are already available on the ground, which have not been actually affected upon or not operationalized. So every year, even the last year's budget had made some recommendations that have not been actually operationalized. For example, the last year's budget said that there should be 5% of should be given to R&D in the private sector, but finally it didn't get operationalized. And as we heard here in last 3 days, 3 of the major functionaries of the defense forces have spoken about all this. The air chief has spoken clearly, saying that the Tejas started project in 1984. The first Tejas flew in 2001, and after that only 40 Tejas have been inducted till date. It is actually pathetic the way the government sector works into this one. So we need to actually propel the private sector towards sorting this out. When the Chinese in the last few days have flown 6th generation aircraft, 6th generation aircraft. You can imagine the kind of strides the countries and the neighborhoods are making, and we are still stuck across to things. So they and also there was 1 lakh crore which was last defense budget stated for deep technology development in the country. Again, it did not get operationalized. So these are recommendations made in the budget which don't actually find themselves into actual implementation. I think before I end here, and I know 5 minutes is no time here, I want to make 1 or 2 recommendations. One is we need to jumpstart. We have to create the deterrence which is imperative against an adversary, which is very large, and it is collusion with the second adversary, which is Pakistan. If we do not create the funds essential, then there is no modernization worth the name happening, and we will be suffering in the long run. So the jump start ought to be done into areas where we can actually create a significant amount of deterrence. And this can only be done through private sector. It cannot be done through the public sector. For example, if we go on item by item competing with Chinese, we can't do it because they are maybe many decades ahead of us. So we need to say, where can we make a mark which is available? Because see, no country wants to share technology with us. Finally, it's absolutely right. Nobody will share the state of the art technology with us. We have major problems in engines. So maybe cyber offensives, maybe electromagnetic and magnetic spectrum, maybe in satellite warfare, maybe in missiles. So there are many ways where we have made steady marches. So we have to say, okay, we have done good work into some facets. We need to branch out into private sector. Now you see L&T and the South Korean firm have done fantastic work in producing artillery guns. So, till the time we get out of the DRDO thing and invest into the private sector in a way the private sector also doesn't feel the pinch, we will not be able to become state of the art into many facets that we can do so. So there is, and also in the last point which I want to make is that there is a startup ecosystem. There are 9,000 odd startups which started for the defense sector alone, of which 900 to 1,000 were successful startups. They actually took off. For example, I'll say the Chinese have just recently gone in for making 1 million drones in next 1 year. 1 million drones of the FPV kinds, of the warfare kinds against the neighbor. Naturally, they're not fighting Indians, they are fighting Americans, but naturally they can also be used against us. So can't we have startups which are doing fantastic work in drones. We can't compete ourselves into these startups and create some technology developmental fund, which Kelker committee had also recommended in as old as 2007, 2008. So we can go back to say, okay, we require a non-lapsable fund. We need to create a technology development funds for drones in the private sector, all through these startups. So there has to be a separate funding ecosystem created for the defense. For if we do not do so, then all the advantages that we are having of moving towards the 2047 Viksit Bharat, lo and behold, one of our neighbors will tap on our door and our growth pattern will get stunted. So I wish to, as passionately as I can, across this point. Okay, and I think somebody speaking. I'll rest here, sir. I'll take on to the next round, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. You have made certain significant points, and they definitely would need little more discussions. They'll need little more discussion and maybe little more insight from you in the second round. I would next request Mr. Dilip Chenoy. I hope he is there. Mr. Dilip Chenoy is chairman Bharat Web 3 Association. He has had an illustrious career, serving as the Secretary General of the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Managing Director and Chief Executive of the National Skill Development Corporation, Director General of the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, and Deputy Director General of the Confederation of Indian Industry. With decades of experience in leading domestic industry bodies, Mr. Chenoy is a renowned figure in the policy domain, and his expertise and contributions have made invaluable contributions to the Indian business landscape. So over to you, Mr. Chenoy. I expect you to be spending more time on technology and technology-led development. We would like to hear from you from the very field of your expertise.
Thank you, Professor Malhotra, and again, thank you, EGROW Foundation, for this opportunity to be part of this distinguished group on the pre-budget discussion. And following General Sharma, and I wish all of you a very happy New Year. I think one of the points which General made was that if you look at the area of technology and R&D, over the last 2 or 3 budgets, some significant announcements have been made. I think the first thing, and the budget document does contain a kind of an action taken report, right? We need to actually look at what has happened in the AI mission or the quantum computing mission. And of course, General mentioned that the 1 lakh crore R&D fund has not yet been operationalized. So I think we need to operationalize that. Overall, I'll just make 3 broad points on the overall economy. And I know that Dr. Dharmakirti Joshi is here, and he is much more knowledgeable about this than I am. But I think if you look at the economy, there are 3 things which we need to address. The first is, I think there's a huge shortage of jobs here, and the unemployment challenge is there. Second, consumption is actually been fairly stagnant, and we need to look at areas of consumption that we need to look at. And the fourth area is that if you look at the initial, third area is that when you look at the initial outlays on infrastructure and improving the productivity of the economy, we need to continue that focus. You have asked me to talk about technology, so I'll make 5 points on technology. I think it is important, the way the budget is structured. So I think Jan Sharma has talked about technology in the defense sector. So, defense is a big part of it, but I think agriculture. And the ministers have been having a series of meetings here and with different things. But one of the key challenges in agriculture is productivity. And how do we look at getting technology uh, fast tracked into the agriculture sector and getting the agricultural education institutions to lead technology implementation there? I think the funding that we give to these institutions should be tied to outputs and with specific, 3 areas. Given the challenge with water, we need to focus on micro irrigation. Second, we want to improve productivity, so we need to look at farm mechanization. And third is that the finance minister talked earlier in the previous budget, not this budget, but before that, about climate resilient agriculture and technology adoption to actually insulate agriculture from climate. So I think this is the kind of use of artificial intelligence, drones, Internet of Things, and of course, the whole area of blockchain to track end-to-end kind of from farm to food or from farm to wherever we send our products so that we can actually track this. One way to look at is to look at, the bottom X number of districts. Like we have aspirational districts, we can look at X number of districts and how do we actually focus on these X number of districts to improve their productivity and to improve their output in the farm sector, sort of mirroring the aspirational districts program. The second big thing within the whole industry sector is the micro and medium and small scale sector. We have to actually, given that there are over 64 million such institutions, they account for significant, parts of employment, exports, and I won't go into the numbers because everybody knows about them. But I think we have to actually provide 3 or 4 things for the medium and small industry here to enable them to invest in green technologies, digital infrastructure, also how to get them to use AI-driven tools and cyber security solutions as they go forward. There is, while incentives is not a good word, but I think whether we can look at through the small and medium scale industry ministry and the institutions that are there, providing matching grants for MSMEs who adopt Industry 4.0 technologies and technology incubation funds, etc. And the large institutions have a methodology to collaborate with academic institutions, but medium and small industries really don't have this opportunity. So how do we kickstart that and enable that to happen? The third broad area is if you look at AI and if you look at quantum computing, there have been initiatives taken in the area of Web3, right? Or in this whole new space of blockchain. There was a national blockchain policy. MITI is doing some good work, but it is like trying to develop technology, and give that for people to develop. There are a lot of Indian firms who are engaged in this sector. Unfortunately, it is being clouded under the whole, crypto investment and other strategies that are there. So I think it is very important to distinguish the two and actually get, simple thing could be that every ministry should look at how they can take 1 or 2 projects in the area of Web3 to actually improve efficiency or services. Or, for example, can you track fake medicines in the national low-cost medicine, Anusandhan Kendras as they call them? Let's just give you an example. The second thing that needs to be done is that today, if you want to invest in this technology, and India accounts for 12% of the global manpower, but a lot of them are going outside because the way that these firms that are developing this technology pay their employees, and you need to develop projects by buying tokens, right? That is buying infrastructure. The whole process of buying tokens is actually challenging because you can't use UPI payments or banking channels. Banks don't lend to companies in this sector, so there's a big challenge. So we need a clear policy to enable that to go forward. The last point which I'm going to make, because this is a 5-minute introductory kind of thing, there are three challenges that this sector is facing. The first is that there's a 1% kind of tax deduction at source for any transaction you do in the virtual digital asset sector. I think moving it to 0.01% will serve the same purpose. The second is that if you're doing any business in the sector, you can't offset losses. So we need to look at enabling. You can say, okay, you can like in the Income Tax Act, the speculative activities can only be gains or losses can only be offset against speculative gain. You can put that same framework here. So at least intra the virtual digital asset thing, you can reduce losses. And I think the final point is that if those those entities that are doing this business and are registered with, let's say, the FIU and other such bodies, should be treated like normal Indian companies, and all facilities should be afforded to them. So those are my 9 points which I would want to make in my opening 5 minutes. And thank you very much for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing the others.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy, in fact, for making your point so specifically and talking about the users of technology in agriculture for MSMEs and how the different challenges being faced in taking technology a little more deeper into society and the economy. What could be possibly done? Our next speaker would be Mr. Dharmakirti Joshi, who specializes in many areas, but is definitely known for his specialization in financial markets. He is currently the chief economist at CRISIL, with over 34 years of experience in economic research and consultancy. He began his career in NCAER, where he spent 11 years. He then moved on to senior positions in Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, New Delhi, and CRISIL. He has an extensive experience in macroeconomic analysis, medium-term assessment of the Indian economy, and forecasting, as well as public finance issues at the central and state levels. He was a member of the working group of the savings for the 12th Five Plan. He is currently a member of the working group on revision of wholesale price index set up by the government of India. So over to you, Dr. Joshi. In fact, please enlighten us with your thoughts on the economy in general and the ensuing budget in particular.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malhotra, and thank you, EGROW, for providing me this opportunity. So I will speak essentially on two things. One is on the need for growth and what budget can do for it. And second, I think on inflation with reference to climate. And because I think one of the reasons why RBI is not able to cut rates is food inflation. So I think let's talk about growth first. I think over the last few quarters, we've seen that GDP growth has been slowing a bit. Overall growth is still 6.4%. I think it is pretty high in a global context, but not high enough for our aspirations of Viksit Bharat, so to say. You need to grow much faster for that. So now one of the reasons why growth slowed down more than expected was in the second quarter, we saw government spending, particularly in infrastructure. It could not match up with what was committed in the budget. Of course, there were elections and there were other things which slowed down. But I think the point is last fiscal also, I think government was not able to spend as much as they had budgeted. So the importance of public infrastructure creation and central government taking a role in that, I think, is very clear from the fact that if it slows down, the growth also slows down. And we are, as a country, trying to develop infrastructure, develop manufacturing. I think for that, I think infrastructure development part, the government needs to contribute. So my one suggestion would be that government should continue with its focus on infrastructure creation. And within that, I think there are a couple of things they need to also take care of. One is, I think, to cut down the project costs and overruns, which reduce the bang for the buck, so to say, of what government has in their kit, what they are spending, because cost overruns increase the cost of the project and you need to spend more on that. And there have been cost overruns. So that, I think, that will make the budgetary spend. So which essentially means that the project should be shovel ready, I think, so that they can be quickly implemented. So that's, I think that's one. And then second, government is also, states are very important, cities are very important. Many of the investments are in the domain of states. So while we are giving, central government is giving interest-free loans to the states, I think a better coordination is required for infrastructure. Otherwise, you'll have very nice highways, but the city infrastructure will remain last mile will remain pretty weak. So I think, so that's point number one. And this also becomes important because globally this environment is turning very volatile, and you will not find much support from the activities that are going around in the world, except that oil will become cheaper, and that is good news for us. So that is point number one. Second, I think climate and food are very important right now. Climate has two dimensions. One is that you need to reduce your emissions, which is your green transition, which will take time. I mean, we have 2070 for that. And whatever you do there will have an impact later on. But what's happening right now is that the impact of shocks on the climate front are increasing. I think 2024 is probably the hottest year that we have ever seen. The last year was also very hot, and we've seen what it does to agriculture, which follows the laws of the nature. I mean, heat, too much water, everything is bad for it. So two things have happened because of climate, several things, but let me point out two things. One is food inflation has stayed persistently high. Last year, in 2023, we typically see in winter months vegetable prices come down. They did not come down last year. This year also, I think they have been very delayed. It's very slowly coming down. So the point is there's something structural happening to agriculture because of the climate shocks. So we need to be more, from budget perspective, need to be more focused on that. RBI can't bring down food inflation. So that's number one. Second, I think what we also saw that I think a large part of the India works in the open, and the more than 50%. And we were for microfinance company, people could not work because of excessive heat, and the collection agents could not collect. So you had delinquencies rising. So climate is showing up in many ways. So I think for that, the point I wanted to make is that we need to give more attention to the adaptation to this climate shifts, and the budget is the only way of addressing that issue. So I think so there are many other things that we can talk about, jobs, etc. But let me stick here. I think this is my 5 minutes, so I think I can come back later. Thank you.
So Professor, you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Joshi, in fact, for saying very precisely the things that you feel like, especially relating to the slowing down economy and the less than expected growth rate, and our concerns regarding climate and food. The next speaker will be Shri Baljit Singh, who is the president of Mohali Industries Association. He plays a significant role in the industrial community of Mohali, contributing to various business and civic initiatives. Under his leadership, and dynamic super plastic industries has become a notable entity in the plastic manufacturing sector. So, Dr. Singh, is Mr. Singh there? Okay. So we'll move to the next speaker, Mr. Ajit Pai. I think he was in Phuket, and I received his message also. He has shared some points with us, and we'll discuss those points maybe after the next speaker. So next speaker would be Dr. Ajay K. Tomar, who would largely be concentrating on MSMEs. Dr. Tomar is a distinguished academician with numerous publications and books to his credit, primarily focusing on economic development, rural banking, and policy analysis. His published papers address critical issues such as financial inclusion, rural development, and impact of government policies on economic growth, often providing actionable insights for policymakers. His work reflects a commitment to advancing research and influencing evidence-based policy decisions, making a significant impact on both academia and governance. So over to you, Dr. Tomar. Your time is 5 to 6 minutes, and I've been told that you would be more concentrating on MSMEs.
Sir, Pranam sir.
Right.
Dr. A.K. Tomar from Aligarh. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Dr. A.K. Tomar from Aligarh. I have to discuss about the challenges before MSME, and SMEs are playing a very vital role in our economy. And I also belong to Aligarh, which is a city of law, and there are lot of several industries of the industries, lock industry and other hardware also, sir. So ye jo whatever difficulties are they are facing, I come to know, I discuss with them. So on these discussion, I have some find out some for them which should be addressed by the finance minister. One of the major issue is access to finance. The most significant challenge faced by the MSMEs in securing adequate and timely financing, and initiative like Mudra and Yojana and scheme of should be have aimed to bridge this gap, but more needs to be done. Second issue is ensuring the adherence to GST, labor laws, environmental standards, and other statutory obligations can be a significant burden on these MSMEs. This should also be addressed by the finance minister. Third one, insufficient infrastructure and inadequate access to technology hinder the growth of MSMEs, especially in legal, lock city, and hardware industry also. The government Digital India campaign has made stride, but continued investment in infrastructure and technology are essential. Fourth one, government programs like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat should be leveraged to enhance global market access. Fifth one is very important. The skilled workforce. This is a great problem to entrepreneurs. They say we are not getting skilled workers. We are not finding proper qualified persons to run their industries, especially in small and cottage industries. So this should be addressed, and skill development initiative must be tailored to MSMEs needs, and collaboration with education institutes should be fostered to bridge the skill gap. There is, sir, when I visited the Meerut, the sports industry entrepreneurs were there. They said we are not finding proper skilled workers, and therefore our production manufacturing are hampered. So it is a common issue of the MSMEs in all over India. They do not find skilled workforce. So the new education policy has given the skill development a priority. So it should be addressed by our administrators and in this budget also. The more finance be given to the colleges, industries, colleges and institutions to skill development in our youth. And sixth one is the MSME should be competitive and innovation oriented. Seventh one, most important, delayed payments. One of the most significant issue faced by MSMEs is the delayed payments by the larger corporation. तो चैनल जो चैनल है इसका फंड्स का वो रुकता है. So this is a issue. And last one, MSMEs needs a stronger voice in policy formation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Tomar, for your inputs regarding MSMEs and what all should be done for them, especially your own experience of Aligarh industry and maybe sports industry of Meerut. They definitely add value to the kind of discussion that you wanted to make. Your points pertaining to collaboration between MSMEs and academia or colleges and university definitely brings another point which has also been mentioned by the earlier speakers. Now I move to the next speaker, Dr. U.R. Rajeshwari. We'll be having the views to be shared by some young economists now. So Dr. U.R. Rajeshwari and Dr. Saakshi Jha, they will be the ones. So I'll first request Dr. Rajeshwari, who is working as Associate Professor in the Department of Economics of Christ University. She's a recipient of Nandan Nilekani Fellowship and RBI Scholarship. She has been a gold medalist from Karnataka University. Her research interest lies in the area of public finance, development economics, and econometrics. She has contributed valuable insights to the industry as a consultant with a robust skill set that includes report writing, analytical skills, policy analysis, and academic program development. We would like to hear from Dr. Rajeshwari what, as a young economist, she thinks about the upcoming budget and what are her views or suggestions for that. So, Dr. Rajeshwari.
Good evening, sir. I hope I am audible to
Yes,
everyone.
you are perfectly audible.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, sir. So actually, since I belong to education sector, of course, like my area of interest also lies social sector broadly, because I always feel that education, healthcare, women's empowerment, skill development, and social welfare are the very important, maybe heart of the economy, because yes, of course, like when we are talking about infrastructure, maybe investment on infrastructure versus investment on social sector. Investment on infrastructure, which would be giving you very fast returns, I mean, which is very visible to everyone in a very short time period. But whereas with respect to investment on education or investment on social sector, which should be taking some time to show its returns, I think our problem still remains the same. That is what I feel. I mean, when still now we talk about the Kothari Commission recommendation, where it says that at least 6% of the GDP should be invested on education sector. But we are like, if we look at past few budgets, always, like historically also, if we look at the budget allocations, it is always around 3 to 3.5%. So we are not going beyond that actually. So that is again a concern for education sector, because very recently I was going through one of the IMF study which says that even if you invest 1% of GDP on your education sector, it has a very high return in the long term. So when we are talking about infrastructure and other, type of sectors where we can see returns very quickly, I think it's very important for us to invest on human resource, because all these sectors are driven by human resource. Because just now Tomar sir mentioned about one very interesting point, that they are not getting skilled workers. So when you say you are not getting skilled workers, that itself is showing you a gap between like what the education system is like teaching and what is the requirement of the industries. There is no match between the skills actually. So therefore I think we are not getting skilled workers. I think even Dilip sir was mentioning about challenges of unemployment. So when you say challenges of unemployment, you can see a huge gap between the skills what we are providing and what industry requires. I think this has always been a problem. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we are not doing anything. Of course, in the previous budget, there were some skill development programs, skill development schemes, which has been announced. But the thing is that, like, nowadays, I'm not referring, or now I'm not so obsessed with the numbers, like how much we are spending. My concern is more over improving the quality of the spending. I think quality of the spending matters. I mean, how much ever like we are allocating, more than that, it is about the quality of the spending that matters. So when we are looking at like very recently, I was looking at two important reports. One was by Acer. Acer basically, collects data from the field, where one of the very important finding of that Acer report, which made me think about the quality of our education expenditure. It says that only 20% of the fifth standard students can read second standard textbook. So basically, there itself, like I was like wondering, like what exactly could be done, to improve the quality of education. I think government or the budget should have something which really focuses on the quality of the spending on education and quality of the education itself. Number one. Number two, with respect to infrastructure, obviously lesser funding, lesser allocation would be leading to underfunding of infrastructure. We can see teacher shortages in the schools and digital divide. So where the world is moving towards AIs, so we are still sticking to conventional teaching methodologies, or maybe our curriculum, that has to be updated. So I think underfunding of infrastructure. Why I'm talking about that? Very recently, Ministry of Education published this UDIS report, where it still shows that maybe around 1.5 lakh schools still do not have functional electricities. Still, some schools do not have functional water facilities, and so on. So when we are claiming that we are doing a lot of things or a lot of allocation in education sector, when it comes to the implication, I think we have to be really careful about the quality of expenditure which we are making. So that is my first point which I wanted to talk about. Number two, that is about the healthcare, another very important sector, healthcare sector. So when we are looking at again healthcare expenditure, every year we would be talking about the same, something around 2 to 2.5% of GDP, which we are spending on health sector, where comparatively many of the developing countries, in fact, they are spending more, than us on education and health. So health infrastructure is also a primary challenge which I am looking at. Especially this budget should focus, or at least go beyond whatever has been done till the last budget. So I was when I was going through the data with respect to health infrastructure, it says that in India it is 1.4 beds per 1,000 population, whereas WHO says that it should be at least 3.5 beds for per 1,000 population. And we can see a lot of regional disparities state-wise, and even in the states, like we can see regional disparities. Like let's say, for example, in Karnataka we have 4.2 beds per 1,000 population, whereas Bihar has only 0.29. beds, that is for per thousand population. That itself shows how much of disparities which we are talking about. So I think health infrastructure, again, like last time there was increase in the budget allocation, but I think we need some more allocation with respect to health in sector, so that we can address these issues. Again, in everyday news, we are seeing Asha karyakartas, like, and their issues. In every budget, like, though we are trying to address their issues, it is not still settling down. So I think that is also one of the very important from my side, like, to look into their issues, like, because they are the one who work in the grassroots level. So I think it's very important for us to understand their problems and address their issues. So maybe like funding for preventive healthcare, strengthening the primary healthcare system, and majorly investment in health insurance would be a very important I think thing which this budget should really focus on. So with related to social welfare, I think quickly, maybe in another 1 minute, I'll just wind up. So because social welfare is also a very important part of our economy, because we still top 1% controlling 40% of the nation's wealth. That is what, I mean, still we talk about inequality. So though we are trying to address these issues with the various welfare schemes, the concern is that leakages in the funds, like what is happening, and inefficiency use of the funds and inadequate funds are the major issues with respect to social welfare schemes. There are many schemes which addresses these issues, but they are failing to address systemic poverty, and they are failing to create sustainable livelihood. So I think this budget should also focus on these some important facts where they can focus, or they can address on these, especially creating sustainable livelihood for the marginalized groups. With respect to skill development, I think many of the panelists who already spoke about skill development, where we can see mismatch which persists between industry requirement and the skilled workforce. Of course, internships and all those things which was like announced in the previous budget is helping to bridge that gap, but still I think when it comes to grassroots level, I think we need some kind of mechanism where strongly it can connect between the skills what the industries require and what the universities or the education system is providing. I think with this I'll conclude, and maybe in the next round, if I get maybe a little bit of gender budgeting, I would like to talk about. So yeah, thank you so much, EGROW Foundation, for giving me opportunity, and thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rajeshwari. You have definitely made us little aware about the little issues in the social sector. We'll come back to those issues after we have the first round of hearing from the experts. So our next speaker is Dr. Saakshi Jha. She is an assistant professor at IIM Ranchi. Her teaching interest lies in macroeconomics, econometrics, and public policy. Her research mainly focuses on macroeconomics and monetary policy. She holds a doctorate degree in economics from Department of Economic Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. She is also a recipient of Professor Mulk Raj Gold Medal in her graduation and has been awarded for her outstanding PhD thesis. So over to you, Dr. Saakshi Jha. I think you are likely to concentrate on investment and unemployment.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, EGROW Foundation, for giving me this opportunity. So as rightly pointed out, sir, I would like to focus on investment and how employment can be driven by private sector here altogether. So why investment I'm focusing on, but because of the reason, if we look at the growth of capital formation, the gross fixed capital formation for the last 2 years, it shows it has grown faster. So given that the investment has grown faster, and when we break down this investment, this private sector GFCF, if we break out into machinery and equipment and intellectual properties product, we find that the growth has only been up to 35%, whereas the growth in investments for products like dwellings, other buildings and structure has shown increment to 105% there. So there's a mismatch between the growth. So if we find the machinery and equipment, the growth that was expected to happen here for the investment is not happening as per the plan. So this gives an alarm to us that whether Make in India plan, the manufacture to build up the manufacturing unit of the Indian economy, whether that is being executed properly or not. Primarily, this will be also interested to see that this budget doesn't proposes any sort of leverage or any sort of program for inducing more of the investment into manufacturing sector. Secondly, why I'm linking investment and employment today is for the fact that if, as newspaper headlines indicate, the corporate profit to GDP ratio has been higher in this financial year. So it has been 15 years higher, the rate has been shown as higher. Now, if the corporates or indeed if the private sector is earning profit, it becomes an ethical and for the private sectors to hire the laborers. Now, the employment problem occurs from here because employment, we have a good supply for the labor force. We have skilled labor force. Indeed, if I talk about the skilled, most of the youth that we are having as of now, either they are graduates, they are engineer holders, they are MBAs altogether, and such a huge youth population are not being accommodated into the Indian economy. Given the fact that private sector is showing such a huge profit, now it becomes ethical or corporate social responsibilities for these firms that they hire such huge knowledgeable youth into their firms for growing more of the production. So given this fact, given this point here, the employment, I come to the employment segment here. The ASI, the annual survey of industries, have reflected that the factory jobs that have grown annually between 2013-14 to 2021 has just been 3.6%. Now, this factory growth shows a growth from the perspective of formal job sector. It talks about the factory jobs. There's a huge chunk of market remain as an informal sector there. Not only this, the EPFO's data shows that lot many youth have subscribed to the PF services, and surprisingly, there has been huge gender segment noticed here. Lot many females have been registered to these EPFOs. They have been existed, showing, and a recent paper was highlighting some invisible power, and they mentioned this invisible power to the female population of the country. So now not only we have a male youth unemployed, we also have to cater female bright youths in the economy. So will this budget address any of such issue? Will be interesting to see how are they going to cater. To sum up entire my point here, I will focus this point from the Viksit Bharat segment, where 2047, we know that India wish to approach to Viksit Bharat, and we also know the growth rate has been a bit slower to achieve that target. The whole segment, the 4 parameters that I find where actually this budget should focus here is the first and the primary segment comes at the geopolitical tension. We know how it is growing. We know what is the problem. It's a huge supply shock to the economy. And the main factor is the uncertainty that is associated with it. So we don't know what is going to happen. So it will be interesting that does this budget incorporate such certainty schemes? It has some certainty budgets for allocation for such scenarios altogether. Secondly, will definitely be the climate and environmental change, as rightly pointed out by Dr. Joshi about how inflation is being now also governed by climatic changes there. So given that not only inflation, there are other factors as well There are other situations as well, which is also being drawn by the climatic situation. So how does this is being tackled during this financial year will be interesting to see. Uh, Thirdly, and most important is the in use of AI and ML into the system. Now we cannot, we all will agree that no matter we wish or do not, we have AI working parallelly to us. And surprise, the scams that are happening, the scams of Chief Justice of India calling on phone, the Skype calls, the letters that come from cyber crimes, this indicate how youth are educated and how well they are using these applications. So given this factor, given that there is a threat whether AI will be taking away the job, or will it be supplementing the labor force, will it make our labor supply more constrained, more unskillful, how is this budget going to look into this problem? Will they look it as a problem, or is they going to consider this to be a catalyst for promoting more growth? So I believe Viksit Bharat that India is looking forward has a couple of traditional challenges vis-a-vis they have new modern challenges to face, and it will be interesting if this budget encounters or address a bit of these challenges here, and that is what I'm looking forward to see. So thank you so much. And I would like to stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Jha, for sharing your insights. We intended to have
Sir, you're on mute.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jha. In fact, we wanted to hear directly from Shri Ajit Pai also, but he's away, in fact, in Phuket, and he sent us advance inputs. I'm sure that each one of us
Mr.
knows him
Malhotra,
very, very.
I'm available online.
Okay. Thank you. I heard that since
Yeah.
Initially you were not there. So
No,
let me very
I
briefly.
was there. I think it was just a bad connection right when you asked me the
Oh,
question.
okay.
But
I'm so
wonderful.
sorry for that. So
Not
we
at all.
would like to hear from you itself. And all of us are, we understand that you have worked with NITI, you have worked with Ministry of Finance, and have seen works related to World Bank, IMF, ADB, NDP, and G20 also, and number of committees you have been part of. I went through your advance inputs also, which largely relate to investments and taxes. So please share your insights with all of us, and we'll come to the second round also, where we would raise certain other concerns and maybe a few questions.
Right. Absolutely, Mr. Malhotra. Thank you so much for having me, EGROW Foundation, and to the chair. And it was indeed a joy listening to all the inputs from all the other speakers. I would say, after listening to all the speakers, is that a lot of the points that have been highlighted on the defense side, on the employment side, on the agriculture side, all of them are very, very important points. But one of the biggest issues that we have had in our historical budgets, especially in India, is that we tend to use a shotgun rather than use a rifle. We go after too many different areas because of all the different interests. And because of that, we actually do fall short of meeting critical mass in certain initiatives. So my suggestion to the government is, especially, since this is early in after an election victory and they are 5 years ahead, that they have the ability to actually prioritize their significant investment upfront in areas that have slightly longer term benefits, because as you get closer to the election cycle, because the political economy, the focus shifts to shorter term. So some of these that we have talked about, that I've mentioned and other speakers have mentioned, like infrastructure relative to consumption, relative to others. I would say that investment should be prioritized much higher than consumption. Consumption should not be a concern at this stage of the evolution of our economy. And investment in infrastructure, despite what has been said by the speakers, that this is an area where the focus should be there, but some of it should go into the other areas, especially talking about education, etc. I'd like to say that in terms of prioritization, why I believe that the infrastructure, especially urban infrastructure and transportation infrastructure, should be the highest priority relative to those others. For example, right now, when we look at urban infrastructure, urbanization in India is today only 36% of the population. The world average is 56%, and the OECD countries are above 80%. And a large part of this deficit in urbanization, which results in inefficiencies, there's a very positive correlation, a very high correlation between per capita GDP and the level of urbanization, even with Indian states, if you look at Indian states. So now our systematic underinvestment in our cities have resulted in basically because of redistribution to rural India, because of our political economy, has resulted to almost 40% informal development in our cities, which lack infrastructure, and you have a lot of slums. Now, why is this important to multiple issues that have been mentioned? If you actually go to Bangalore or you go to a Hyderabad where the focus is on jobs, you will see that the people that have been educated in the poorest states of India, you look at Jharkhand, you look at Bihar, and you look at UP, very low per capita GDP, 1/3 the national average. You will see educated from there, they all run away if they don't have living conditions and job in their own state. So these people you will find Bangalore, if you look at the nature of these new tech hubs, it is people that come from outside. So my strong contention is that the cities in India be encouraged to improve the quality of infrastructure. We don't fight urbanization. You know, Professor Ramesh Chand, that has been on the EGROW Foundation's calls, has very often said that the fastest way to increase agricultural productivity, actually the way he said it is, the fastest way to double farmers' income is to half the number of farmers. India has 43% of its workforce in agriculture. The best practices for a large economy is only 2% of a population can feed the entire country. And as one of the writers on this particular, the unemployment of the educated is even higher right now than of the uneducated, because the farm economy lands up having disguised unemployment, people that are out of underemployment. So our focus should be in being able to absorb these people. The skills that you say are missing at the location that industries want them, because a lot of these people are going elsewhere, internationally, etc. So my contention is that the big trust that the government has made in the past 5 years on things like industrial productivity and begun its thrust on urbanization, it's not a lack of success that we are watching small employment over there. It is insufficient still kind of investment to make our industry more competitive and our cities also more competitive to being able to transport people efficiently. Lots of issues in congestion, etc. So that would be my main, contention, that we need to focus ourselves on the biggest deficits, which even today is infrastructure, and even today would be our urbanization happening in a proper way to get those efficiency agglomeration everywhere, across sectors. So that would be the main thing. The two facts that I'd point to, which other speakers have hinted at, which is that the direct taxes are still growing very firmly for the country. But indirect taxes, which is paid for the entire population, has slowed down to single digit year over year. So it tells you that the big gains from a revenue perspective from the overall economy are now almost over. And the direct success-linked taxes from corporate and individuals are still growing. And on that front, what I would say is that indicates that the government should start shifting from focusing on utilizing its own resources now going forward at the same pace it has when we've had very high buoyancy, to using what we would call, blended finance, to the government providing, like the PLI, either viability gap funding of various sorts, or credit enhancement to drive investment of the private sector, as has been pointed out by a couple of speakers for the defense sector and the private sector, to make our industries more competitive so that we can be more competitive globally. I think most of the other points are covered, but that's what I would say. The big theme should be still the overwhelming focus on infrastructure. The two areas of infrastructure would be urbanization in the right way for the housing, and then also on transportation, energy transportation would be those two main areas. And the thrust, even in these areas, the government will not have enough money for all these areas, should be on using blended finance rather than direct lending, using PPP rather than using EPC. That would be my points today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Pai. Now we have some time left, in fact, and we can very quickly go for the second round. Dr. Sharma, could we have you again? Maybe the earlier also you wanted to make some more points, but could not make. So we have another opportunity. And especially looking at the resource constraints of the government, when you talk about the paucity of the resources for defense, how do you look at the whole situation? And what do you think that how more resources could come to different areas? Because all those expenses have found a mention from different speakers. So how is it manageable, in fact, in your idea of the things? Operationalization of schemes, resources has been a problem, especially in the current year because of elections, etc. We all know. So how do you look forward? Because lot many defense related equipments have been purchased, procured in last few years also. Earlier, in the name of resource constraints, we were not able to procure those kinds of equipments. So how do you look at this entire situation? Very, very quickly and very briefly.
Thank you, sir. Very interesting discussions that have taken place today, and some very eye-opener remarks have come through. Now, the fact is that defense is taken as a not contributory sector towards the national development. And previously, one used to hear words like non-planned expenditure, etc. So it's looked down as not contributing. Now, the defense by itself is a strength of about 1.5 million, which is a very large employer in the country. And if you count the families dependent on it, about 1 crore of people are dependent on defense sector, and that's only the salaries part of it. Now, salaries and of course pensions part of it. The point is that there is a resource crunch in the organization, and I can make grandiose ideas about where the money can be generated for the defense forces, and know very well that the competing requirements from unemployment to agriculture to infrastructure development and towards social sector are so large that it is very difficult for making some cogent remarks on this issue. But suffice it to say, if we take these 15th Finance Commission's recommendations and find methods to generate funds from the disinvestment of PSUs, for example, now everything has to be outcome based. What is the outcomes that have come through in the large investment that we do it into PSUs and the DRDO? If we still have to go across to buy aircraft from outside, we can't produce engines in India. We cannot, the time lag is so tremendous that despite the fact there's Atmanirbhar Bharat, but Atmanirbhar it doesn't stand through, because the developmental processes are so weak. One is that we have to quantify what capabilities we require. We may seek the moon, but we can't have the moon. And so we decide that to combat with two difficult adversaries, what is it that will deter them? We don't want a war. Naturally, we don't want a war. No country wants a war. But to deter these two adversaries, what is essential to deter them? And there is where we can find via media to instead of having broad-based development, actually focus ourselves towards something specific that will deter them. There is where there is some kind of thought process required into this management of the finances here. So we need to disinvest. We need to disinvest the PSUs. We have to see whether all the PSUs that are working in the defense establishment are actually pulled up their socks. No, even when you say corporatization of the Ordnance Factories Board was carried out, has the outcomes changed? Has the working culture changed towards corporatization of Ordnance Factory Boards? When we made into corporations, actually doesn't lend itself. It is still government. It still moves in the governmental manner. So there is a need for getting out and getting onto the private sector. And I know we have proven ourselves that the private sector in the course of, we are now exporting up to 23,000 crores, largely coming out from private sector. And private sector has the capacities. Only thing, they require the mandatory support. You just can't push the private sector to do something and then you say you can't buy it. We have to have a time frame. And that time frame is essential in case we want to sort it out. And a point I want to make is that the procedural issues of the of the ministries are so, our ministry, that is defense, is so tiresome that a 700 volume procurement procedure actually puts you off into getting into these kind of things. I'll saying that the asset that we have is monetization of land and PSUs. And if there is need be, and this is the 15th Finance Commission report, we want to do something. We have to have do something on this one. And last point is that I think the startup sector has proven itself that they have the capacities. Now we have to handhold for a period of time to make sure that they are able to produce what we are required. If we go to the governmental sector also doing the same thing which private sector can do, we will be actually pushing good money in bad investments. So we need to jumpstart the private sector, especially the startups, and some of them have shown great promise. Bharat Forge, L&T, Tatas, in the larger sector and in the startup sector. I think we can do good amount of work in case we do. And we require to create a technology development fund for the defense industry separately, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. It brings us to another good point, in fact, that why startups in India, who have shown so much of confidence and maybe promise also, why they did not take defense sector as one of their priority sectors, in fact. So I think it is worth considering a point. Now I move to Mr. Dilip Chenoy. If he has to add something to what he had said.
Well, thank you, Professor. I think I'll just pass. I'll let the others speak, and if there's something which they've not said, I'll come back at the end.
Thank you. And now we move to Dr. Joshi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Malhotra. Let me answer one of the questions which was raised by Mr. B.K. Bhoy on productivity. So, because I think I'll take half a minute to say that as per the Solo framework, there are three factors there are three drivers of long-term growth. One is capital, other is labor, and the third is productivity. And if the same amount of capital and labor produce more, that means productivity is rising. So productivity is in a way magic. And I think so to address his question on what budget can do to promote productivity. So I look at it, I think, in a limited fashion, three drivers of productivity. One, of course, is physical infrastructure. It reduces turnaround times. It improves connectivity, and we all know that promotes productivity. So I think the more we focus on that and bridge the last mile gaps, I think more efficiency we'll get out of that. Second, I think the digitalization, which has actually leapfrogged. Physical infrastructure is taking time to develop, but digital has increased much faster. So we're seeing a lot of efficiency, whether it is the payment system or credit enablement framework. So there is a lot of benefit that comes from digitalization, which we need to keep nurturing. The third driver is reforms. I think one of the reasons why India moved to a higher growth trajectory was economic reforms. And if I look at all the three drivers, the fastest development is in digital, followed by physical infrastructure, and slowest in reforms. I think the labor laws which were codified couple of years back, I think have not been passed till now. So now the issue is these three drivers of productivity operate in synchronicity also. I think if you have digitalization, you can actually use Digi Yatra and enter the airport very quickly. That's a 5 minute of joy. But reaching the airport itself in any city is a nightmare, and then waiting for the plane. So that is a physical infrastructure. So you need actually synergies between all three of them to get the full productivity benefit going ahead. And then finally, I think productivity will also come from AI, etc., which many companies are going to embrace over time. It's very incremental right now, but over a 6 to 7 year period time, I think it will become transformational. That's what I think will happen. So I think, so let me cut it short and say that this is how I see total factor productivity rising.
Dr. Joshi, one very small question. What do you think when developed countries, as far as climate concerns are concerned, they are drastically failing? What is there for India, in fact, which India could effectively do in that regard?
Well, I think,
because you have shown your concerns regarding that.
Yeah, I think so. Climate change, the problem is that the developing countries do not have the money to do that. So there is something called a energy trilemma, where I think there are three sides of the triangle. You have energy security, you have energy affordability, and then comes the energy sustainability or transition. Now, we've seen with the global experience also, whenever you have security, energy security, and energy affordability, you focus on transition. The moment Europe's energy security and energy affordability was threatened, they started thinking about opening coal mines. I think so. It's all a function of that. For a developing country like India, I think we need to have enough energy to propel growth. I think we cannot be as aggressive on energy transition as the advanced countries are, unless technology becomes cheaper. I mean, for instance, solar became very cheap. So that's why 17% of installed capacity in India is solar. So I think the point is, it is very nuanced, the energy debate, and the energy transition will happen according to the needs of the country. Even in United States, actually, because of data centers and AI, the amount of energy, electricity that is required is going to be 10% more than what was originally budgeted. So they are also opening up oil. Mr. Trump is already going to announce more drilling, so to say. So I think so. The basic point is, developing countries need to grow. They don't have the money. Unless they have funds, they cannot pursue energy transition the way Europe is pursuing, for that matter. Let me stop.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. I go back to Mr. Dilip Chenoy, if he has to add something to what he said, or maybe a point which could not be said earlier or discussed earlier.
No, thank you, Professor. I think I just want to make one point, and this refers to technology. And I gave one example when I was speaking earlier about the need to let technologies play out in the market, right? So, we are going in for electrification of vehicles, right? Just 1 second.
Right.
So if you look at electrification of vehicles and charging, there are two forms of charging. One is like a fixed charging, and the other new innovative way is battery swapping. So if you see all of the FAME subsidies or the infrastructure provided for charging infrastructure is all, or the buses actually ordered, are all based on fixed charging model. Whereas, I think it should be given neutrality and say, okay, it could be either fixed charge or swapped batteries, and let the OEs and let the persons actually decide in which way it goes. Swapping, of course, it has lighter batteries. So if you take a truck, for example, it is half the weight of the original battery. So you can use that to carry higher payloads. You don't have to increase the axle weight and go to Ministry of Road Transport to allow them to run, etc. You can do a lot of innovative things. So this is one area of technology neutrality that we need to think of. And I think General Sharma's point about the defense startups is very interesting, right? And when I was at FICCI, we had this defense startup group. There was a fund and all which was proposed, right? and enable that to happen. So, but unfortunately, it went nowhere. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy. Now I move to Dr. Ajay Tomar, if he has to add something. Dr. Tomar, would you like to add something to what you said?
Sir, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Would
Thank
you
you,
like
sir,
to add
giving me
something?
opportunity. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir,
Okay, please
I
take a
request,
minute and please, very quickly.
sir, I request from the Finance Minister, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, to to consider the challenges of the MSMEs and the tax GST rates on locks are 18%. It is a request from our lock industry from Aligarh that the tax rates be reduced from 18 to 12%. This is the request from all lock manufacturers here, and this is a genuine demand, sir. Lock is an essential item, and if the tax rates are reduced and they are promoted, naturally they will be able to compete globally. As China is also and Hong Kong and Singapore, they are giving challenges to Aligarh lock industry. So this is my humble request from the FM of India that it should be considered to give tax rebate to lock industry and MSME also, sir. All. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Rajeshwari, could we have you again? Dr. Rajeshwari?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So without taking much time, I think if I don't talk about gender budgeting, I thought that social sector would be incomplete. So I thought quickly one or two comments about gender budgeting, because I always felt that gender budget is still unutilized tool, because it is especially with respect to gender specific allocations, where we talk about especially with respect to women empowerment. So I thought that quickly one or two this thing, that is increase in allocations for women centric programs, I think still essential. Why I say that still essential, because latest PLFS data shows that women participation in labor market is just 37%, though we are seeing 4% increase from the previous survey, but still 37% is very less compared to, I think, global this thing. So I thought that still we need, I mean, even when you are looking at the as percentage of GDP, it is just 1%, which not even like complete 1%, around 1%, which we are spending on gender budgeting. So I think this should be greater allocation, especially skill-based programs in the rural areas, so that we can make them independent and work them or participate them in the labor market. So,
Dr. Rajeshwari, anything in
yes,
particular that you would like to make a mention about on increasing the productivity of the social sector expenditures?
so basically, since everybody
very
is talking,
precisely,
yes,
very precisely.
Everybody is talking about now it is going to be AI driven economy. It is very obvious that education sector is mostly affected by AI. So basically it is about the skill based on the AI this thing, so that there should be match between the industry and the educational institutions. Because if there is no match, then as said, so it's very difficult to get skilled labors, for certain type of work. So I think I'm sure that I'm expecting that there would be more allocation for AI driven education technologies.
Right. Any reflection from your side on private sector healthcare?
Sir, private
Just
sector
one
healthcare.
line, just in one line. What is your idea about that?
Not
Right,
in,
because
not
you made a lot
I
of mention about the public
yes.
sector healthcare.
Sir,
Right.
I always believe that at least education and health sector, where government has to work efficiently. So therefore, public, of course, private sector plays very important role. I don't say that, because both education and health sector, you can say PPP models might work very well, even with respect to education and health. But when PPP or any other private sector this thing increases, access to education and health becomes very restricted. That is what I feel. So I think that government can take up very efficiently these two sectors at
Thank you.
least. I think that
Thank you.
contributes to HDI, Human Development Index.
Thank you. Dr. Jha, Dr. Saakshi Jha, would you like to add something?
Yes, sir. Just a point here. So,
okay.
yes, sir.
Okay.
So
And
we have been
how
talking
how
about.
do you look at the relationship between AI and unemployment?
So definitely AI is playing a significant role, and it can actually develop more, it can make skillful to the laborers. So maybe it is like a technology boom, and if we look at the solo growth model, whenever there is a technology boom, growth take place. So AI can boost the labor supply market, it can boost the laborers, make the labor market more efficient, and thereby increasing the productivity. So definitely AI will improve. So one point that I missed last time, which I would like to add, is we have been talking about the startup investment, which has been very promising. I feel this is a time that we should also talk about the long-term investment and sustainable investment. Because if we look at the job creations, job could only take place when we have investments that are more sustainable, that are developing more jobs into the market. So these are only my submissions, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Pai, could we have you again?
No, I think most of my major sort of observations and prioritization are done. And it was good to hear the reinforcements from some of the other speakers.
Thank you. Thank you. So on the whole, we have already done with our time limit, in fact. So it has been a wonderful session. We had a scores of good points, in fact, many new ideas also. And those ideas would definitely need a further exploration. I think a lot of research has to go deeper into that. And one thing that I would like to suggest, taking clue from all this, there are internal contradictions, and maybe right.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, I'm Tomar Hindsa from Hall Industry Association.
Okay.
On behalf of my president, Mr. Baljit Singh, can I say something?
You could say over a minute only now, because we are already done with our time.
Surely, sir, surely.
Okay.
See, sir, there is a very big issue that has to be addressed very properly, very intelligently, and in the cohesion of academicians, industry, and the government collectively. See, the students coming up from our professional colleges, they are not opting for the industry. They are now opting for to go for the jobs. Mostly they are going abroad then to the MNCs, and they are not at all interested in entrepreneurship. So this thing has to be catered very intelligently, unless and until this has this is catered in budget. And with the land prices are soaring too much, due to which this is being suppressed. And the most of the industrial departments in the states, they are becoming the real estate agents itself, and that is very big sort of affair, which has to be addressed properly in the budget. Unless and until this is addressed, we are going to have a big dip in India. At present, we are having the cheapest living over here in India in the world. We are having the cheapest internet rates over here. So why can't we promote the entrepreneurship and industrialization for the budding coming out our students from the professional colleges? These are the only areas wherein the economy gets generated. Only the industry gets the economy generated. Otherwise, the other things which are the trading and all those things, these are just only economies changing the hands. So if at all we want to generate the economy, we shall have to have a look upon this thing. See, we people are going off from our ages. Who will replace us? Unless and until the new students coming out from the professional colleges, they replace us, where the industry will be the economy generation go. So I request to each and every academician also present over here, industrialists as well as the government, to please take this thing very carefully if we want to save our India. That's
Mr.
all.
Malhotra, can I chip in for a minute?
We have already spent the entire time. In fact, within half a minute, if you could say your thing, please.
Yes, within half a minute.
Right.
Hello, should I start?
If you permit.
Please,
Small
within
will-
half a minute.
Can half a minute, okay. One, the budget does not ever give an action taken report of the previous budget.
Right.
So that is my first recommendation. Number two, we have 800 districts, 450 districts don't have a medical college. You asked about public sector, private sector investment. We must have a medical college in each district. Number three, AI and skilling in each school, college, and paramount today.
Hello.
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 We can hear you. We can hear you. Please.
Okay. Small wind turbines are being manufactured in Bangalore.
GST, for GST, new tracks, gentleman who said nobody has looked at each rate and to find out whether it's tenable or not. Number five, it will reach an economy of 30 trillion from 3 trillion. We can't allow the kind of freebies that the government is doing. Here we have a 3 billion worth of pulses and 17 billion worth of edible oil. Now, this is not rocket science. We must concentrate on this, which is the biggest. And my last point is.
Thank you. Okay.
Hello. May I put one question only?
Now, no questions, please.
30,
if there is
30
something
seconds.
more to be. No question. No question is to be. Please, no question
only
will be answered
observation
by a panel.
or 30 seconds.
Okay.
30 seconds
Okay. Go
only.
on. Go on. Go
You
on.
see that renewable energy can be generated by using small wind turbines, which are 100% indigenous, and they are being manufactured in Bangalore. Kindly advise the Honorable Finance Minister to take care of small wind turbines, means 1 kilowatt to 100 kilowatt. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Ratan Chand, now over to you. You wanted to make some announcement. And
Yes,
just before you make the announcement, let me thanks all the panelists. Let me convey my thanks to all the panelists who have contributed immensely. They have raised new concerns, new points, and many of the ideas would definitely need further research, maybe piloting at some or the other stage. I think many good suggestions have come as a result of today's discussion on budget. I'm sure that many of these issues will be taken forward to the Finance Minister for consideration. So over to you, Dr. Chan.
Okay, thank you, sir. On behalf of EGROW Foundation, let me also thank all the participants who have contributed significantly to the discussions, and also thanks to the chairperson, Professor Malhotra, who have beautifully coordinated all these discussions. And before we end, there is one announcement. In the next Friday, on 17th of January, we are having a webinar on inflation targeting. And the speaker is Professor John Lipsky, an American economist and former managing director of International Monetary Fund, Washington, D.C. So with this announcement, I again thank all the participants and the chairperson on behalf of the EGROW Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity. Thank you.